Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about dynamic loft and why it's the secret weapon to compressing your irons. All right guys, so let's talk about dynamic loft and why it is the secret to compressing your irons. Now, when we're talking about compressing your irons, of course, compressing your irons is just another way to say hitting your irons solid. And of all of the things that go into a golf swing, all of the little micro things that could lead to you hitting the ball solid or not, at the end of the day, at the moment of impact, dynamic loft is really the secret weapon, is the one thing that matters more than anything else. And that's a measurable fact, not just a YouTube title. It actually is what it is. So what is dynamic loft first? How do you check and see what yours is? And then three, ultimately, how do you improve it? I want to talk about what it is first. I'm going to give you a couple of my best drills to show you to lower your dynamic loft. Dynamic loft, so you guys have clubs, right? I have a 7-iron in here. Every club you have, an iron included, will have some amount of loft. So it's just the difference between the leading edge and the top of the club. There's an angle there, right? So it has some amount of loft. For example, if you have a sand wedge that says 56 degrees on the bottom of it, that means there's 56 degrees of loft. That's the angle between the leading edge and the top. I don't know if that's scientifically perfectly correct, but that's how I would interpret it, the angle between here and here. So there's loft on the club. The point is, at the moment of impact when you strike a golf ball, the less loft you have, the more compressed the ball will feel. The more loft you have, the less compressed the ball will feel. If you kind of think of this example with a driver, you have less loft, right? With a sand wedge, you have more loft. When you hit a driver really fast, you hit it really solid, does that feel really compressed or really soft? It feels really compressed when you hit a driver good. Why is that? That's because you have less loft. Most of your drivers probably have 10 degrees of loft. So when you hit that really solid, it feels compressed because there's less loft. On the contrary, if I were to grab a sand wedge over there that has 56 degrees of loft, don't get caught up in numbers, just has a lot more loft to it. When you really pure a sand wedge, does it feel super pure like a driver? No, of course it doesn't. Why? Because there's more loft to it, okay? So less loft equals more pure golf shots. So that's kind of the key concept here, okay? Hopefully you guys understand that. Now, when you're actually looking at a golf swing, where you'll see this and where we get caught up in really is where the shaft is at impact. So most of us should all know good ball strikers have the shaft at impact looking like what? Do good ball strikers have the shaft straight up and down? Do they have it leaning forward or do they have it leaning back? Well, we should know that most all good ball strikers have the shaft leaning forward. I would say on average their hands are inside a thigh or over their left shoe. So the shaft leans forward for good ball strikers. Why does that matter? Well, here we go again. If I took this club and I had the shaft straight up and down, it would have a normal amount of loft. Now, if I lean my shaft forward, does that take loft off or add loft? That would take loft off, right? And we just got done saying that if you take loft off, you hit the ball more solid, more compression. There's a thing called spin loft, and I'm not going to talk about because I'm probably going to lose some of you guys, but it's the angle between your angle of attack and your dynamic loft. There's like a little vector thing. Maybe we'll throw something up here if Mary's feeling generous of what that actually is in a little visual. Angle of attack and dynamic loft. The lower those two get, that angle, the more you compress a ball. The higher they get, you don't compress the ball as much. All we're really trying to do is lower that angle. If I hit down on my 7-iron 3 degrees, let's say, okay, I hit down on my 7-iron 3 degrees. My 3 degrees is constant, that little bottom angle. Some of you guys I'm losing here. Now, if I take the loft of my club and I lower that down, I lowered that top vector. I made the angle smaller, more compression, okay? Little side note as we go here. Sometimes some of you guys comment on videos that like it's too much information or there's too much stuff. No, go back and watch this again. Go on the old Google and do a little research for it. Knowledge is power in terms of this. It's like when I read a book and I read a 300-page book, I don't memorize every single thing in that 300-page book. I'm looking for a few little nuggets that I can take in there and I keep from each book I read and I expand on that. Take this information I'm giving you and then dumb it down into, like we're going to do in a simple feel or two, and go play. Don't get scared away from too much information. You need to know this stuff to improve. So lowering the dynamic loft is the key here. Okay, you guys with me on that? Lower dynamic loft to hit it more solid. How do you do that? You do that through the shaft being forward at impact. Okay, so if I were just going to hit one or two, for example, if I come down and my shaft is back, I'm going to have too much loft. If I'm straight up and down, too much loft. I want to have the handle forward. We'll talk about how to do that in the drill in a second. But just as I were to hit a kind of stock shot here, I'm looking for the handle to be forward, okay? So now, how do I do that? Well, the first thing that needs to be talked about is club face angle, okay? Meaning, when I see golfers who have too much loft, why would you have too much loft at impact? Overwhelmingly, 80+% maybe, have too much loft because you're trying to square a club face. Okay, so if your club face is too open and you're trying to square it, the act of squaring your club face is going to lead to this kind of flip motion, okay? I've seen it a million times, there's no arguing it. When you have a club face that's too open, you're going to throw and you're not going to have dynamic loft and you're not going to compress the ball. And I can tell you to get your hands for it all day long and it is not going to happen because your face is open. Every player that I work with that either has a strong grip or has good wrist conditions so the face is more square here coming into impact, has the shaft more forward, and then magically they all rotate better, okay? These things all come back to club face. So you have to check grip, you have to check forearm rotation, you have to check wrist conditions. We've got 400 videos on those subjects. You have to go and look at those things, okay? Can't do that all in one video. But really the king of the hill, and the point of this and the drill I would start with two little things in a second, is where your club face is at last parallel. So we're gonna talk about that in a minute, how to check for it and how to fix those things. So at last parallel is really the king of the hill in terms of club face. So we said your club face needs to be in a good position so that you can deliver it to the point where you have a lower dynamic loft to compress the ball. Your checkpoint is where the club face is, the leading edge of it, at last parallel in your downswing. And I want you to go on here while you're on YouTube, after you watch this and other videos, and go search for golf swings that you like, players you like, and watch them in slow-mo and watch where the club face is at last parallel. And watch and see where the handle and the release pattern is of those players. Guys and gals that have the face more toe up or even on this side are gonna have a release pattern where the handle's less forward and they have more throw with the right hand and right arm, okay? Guys and gals that have the club face more tilted down here are gonna have the opposite of that. They're gonna have the handle more forward and less throw with the right arm. Why is that? Because they're just reacting to where the club face is. If your club face is open and you know how to play from there, you're gonna do something to throw at. And that means no shaft lean, no compression, no dynamic loft. From here, too high dynamic loft. If I'm here like this, club face tilted down, then I can release it how I want. So your checkpoint is club face tilted down. How much? If this is toe up, I'd like to see it toe down probably somewhere between, let's call that 15 degrees and like 45 would be pretty turned down. So somewhere between there and there. If you haven't been compressing the ball and or you have lost the ball to the right for years, you should not be worried about getting too closed. You should be too closed, right? Too far tilted down here would be a good problem. You don't want to have the club face too tilted up. Are you with me on that? So where that club is at last parallels the deal. I would begin by training that. Now, where that club face is primarily dictated by two things. One is your grip and two is your wrist conditions. Okay, so depending upon what grip you have, you can get away with some different things, but assuming a normal neutral left hand grip where the V's over by my collarbone, I'm gonna give you the two drills that I would do to lower your dynamic loft. Okay, so two drills that I use all the time for myself. I actually genuinely use this in my practice and with the students I work with. I either use the Tour Striker products, this one's the Educator, or I use a hanger. I use one of these two. I don't have really any rhyme or reason why I use either one, just kind of whatever's laying around. Some players like this better, some players like this better. Cool for me either way. We'll put a link in the description down below for the Tour Striker Educator. You know I love Martin Chuck, his products there, or you can use a hanger. I'm gonna use a hanger because that's what I like to use. So when I do the hanger, some of you have seen this before, and it's nothing fancy, and it just plain works, okay? It just plain works. When I take the hanger, I put it on the side of the club. I grip it. If it's the first time, you'll get used to it. It takes a little bit. So I grip it on here. I start with the hanger on the side of my wrist. When I make a backswing, I want to keep the hanger on the side of my wrist, maybe even pressing against my wrist a little bit. And if I do that with a neutral grip, you see where my club face is? Tilted slightly down, that's what I want, right? So I want that during my takeaway, and I want even more of it during my downswing pattern. So I like to set it up. I have it on my left wrist to start with. I have that against my left wrist. I'm checking my club face tilted down here. But really what I'm trying to feel is during my downswing, I press the hanger against the inside of my forearm. So from here, I'm pressing this against it, like I'm curling my left wrist down. You see my club face here? The more I curl down my logo down towards the ground, left wrist flexing, I'm pushing this against my left wrist. See how my club face goes down from there, okay? If I come here and I just keep it flat, my club face stays the same. If I cup it, logo up towards the sky, which is a lot of you, club face open, hanger off my wrist, guess what's coming next? No dynamic loft in a flip motion. So I want to have this on here and I want to press it down. Now notice when I flex it, it's also unhinging. The club head's low and inside. I'm not turning it down like this. The shaft's getting steep here. I'm keeping it low and inside, and I'm pressing that against my hand. I also feel the inside part of this hanger pressing against my thumb as I work down. So notice that club face tilted down, but still inside my hands here, okay? Because I see some of you guys going like this. Inside my hands here like this. I'm gonna keep pressing that down into and past impact. So I feel like the logo of my glove, my left wrist is curling down under this, like I'm curling that. Look at that club face. Now my hands are way forward now. Look at that dynamic loft, okay? I'm not shoving my hands forward. That's a byproduct of me curling under and rotating. Curling under and rotating. I feel my right wrist when I do this. I'm staying bent back the whole time. Bent back and a little bit of pronation here at the bottom. You are allowed, in fact you should, use your hands and wrists to lower your dynamic loft if you have too much. Think about this, like if you have too much dynamic loft and you're not compressing it, and I said, hey, you can use your hands and hit the ball more solid right away, or not use your hands and keep hitting it shitty. Which one of those two would you pick? You would choose, use my hands and hit it good. You're just learning to use your hands correctly. You're not adding timing. It's not the wrong thing to do. You're just learning how to use your hands correctly. So hanger on the side. I'm coming here like this. I'm tilting it down. I'm keeping this here. My handle's getting forward. I'm not shoving my hands forward. Handle's getting forward. I'm turning, and I feel that into my follow through. Same thing. So a little half backswing. Hanger on. Crank it down. Feel this part against my left wrist. Right wrist stays bent. Left wrist is curling under. Right wrist stays bent. Look at my dynamic loft. And then I'm going to, for me to hold my right wrist and keep my left wrist bowed and take my damn loft, I have to add a little bit of rotation. That's right hand and right arm pronating this way, palm towards the ground. Not this way, I'm going here, and my left wrist has some supination for me to keep my dynamic loft down and my face closing. So what I would do is I'm going to go ahead and hit some, and of course, I would pair this with some feedback. But in the beginning, grab a hanger, check that club face here, tilt it down, and I would start to hit a couple. And if you do it, you should compress it, and it should feel pretty different than your normal. Like when I do that and I do that well, you know, as much as I'm going to talk about feedback and the need for feedback, and you need to know if you're doing it right or not, this is one of the few things where you should get pretty immediate difference in context. So same thing, kind of rehearse it, tilt it down, keep turning, faces down, handles forward, hands getting forward naturally, not by shoving them forward. Same deal, feeling the same thing. Good. And that feels really good. And that's exactly what I would do with that. And I would just keep rehearsing that. I'd pop that in there, feel the same deal, tilt it down, gaining feels, giving myself feedback here from mirror or video to confirm that I'm doing it. and then I'm just replicating the same piece. And as with all these things, notice the kind of swings I'm taking. Short, slow, lots of feedback. So that's the deal. Dynamic loft is genuinely the secret weapon for compressing your irons and hitting the ball farther. Lowering your dynamic loft is what it is. The more you lower your dynamic loft, the more solid you're going to hit the ball. The only little caveat I'm going to throw in at the end here is the lower your speed is, the less you can get away with low dynamic loft. Okay, so guys and gals that swing really fast and have 1,000,000 miles an hour, like Dustin Johnson, Cameron Champion, can really get the handle forward and lower the loft and hit it solid. If your club head speed is lower, you don't want as much handle forward. You're gonna have a little bit of throw. So you have to kind of match those two and find a middle ground. But use the hanger, use a torque stroke edge, use whatever for wrist angles. Give yourself confirmation. Check your club face at last parallel and check your favorite swings. See where those are. You have to have your face square or closed to get dynamic loft. If you do, you'll hit the ball a lot more solid than you normally do. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. Hey guys, thanks for watching today's video. If you liked the video, please do me a favor, click the like button down below. Click the notification bell if you haven't. Also, please subscribe. CogornoGolf.com is up and live. If you guys want more instruction from me, tailored for you, check out the link in the description down below. Thank you guys.